The Hong Kong Open Super 500 has just concluded yesterday, and as I promised, I'm here to talk about it. I'm going to be talking about the winners, of course, going to mainly focus on those, most likely some of the finalists as well, and anything else that caught my eye during the week. But before I get into all of that, I do want to say a quick thank you to all of you who have shown support for this new series idea, and a special thank you for those of you who suggested names for it. Some of them were interesting, some of them were really clever, and some of them I really actually did consider. But I have come up with a name, a slightly shortened version of what I had originally. So the name I've come up with for now is Beckman's Breakdown. Now that name isn't set in concrete, it is open to potentially changing, so if you think it's rather crap, then do let me know, and if you have any other further suggestions, then also let me know. But anyway, let's get into it. Let's get into the very first Beckman's Breakdown, starting with the Hong Kong Open Super 500. As I said in the intro, I think the obvious place is to start with the champions. And for ease, I'm going to go through them in the same order that was played on finals day. The first final of the day was the women's doubles, and it saw Pearly Tan and Tina Muralidharan of Malaysia take on Lu Shengshu and Tang Ning of China. I must admit, I thought this final could be a really explosive day to final Sunday. The Malaysians were fantastic in their semi-final where they beat Baek Ha-na and Lee So-hee. What really stood out to me was the pace they played at, as well as their rotational play. I haven't seen a women's doubles pair rotate that quickly and efficiently ever. Maybe Matsuyama and Shida, but even then, the Malaysians were on a whole other level. However, I felt that Lu Shengshu and Tan Ning had not just the speed and power to counter this, but also the tactical know-how. But boy was I wrong, as from 10-8 down in the first game, Pearly and Tina took complete control, and by the end of the match, Lu and Tan simply had no answer. Had it been a boxing match, I feel the ref might have called it early. On top of Pearly and Tina's speed and rotations was a really high level of creativity. Lots of feints and changes of pace and angle. I felt I was watching an Indonesian men's doubles pair in action. But maybe that last point shouldn't be all too surprising, as one of their main coaches is Indonesian men's doubles legend Rexy Meineke. Pearly was hitting her usual firebombs from the back, but was mixing it up with drops and different angles. And Tina, well, her front court was wow. Once she got hold of it at the net, I don't think the Chinese were ever able to get it away from her. All in all, a fabulous performance, and the fact that this is their second final since the Olympic Games does show quite a nice level of consistency, and I'm not surprised that a lot of Malaysian fans are getting excited for the future of this pair. Maybe they could be a pair to tear down that women's doubles dominance from countries like Japan, Korea and China. From the women's doubles final to the men's doubles final, a final which you could probably call half a surprise. I say that because Kang Min-hyuk and Seo Seung-jae definitely weren't a surprise, as for the third tournament in a row they made the final. But their opponents, Gautama and Isfahani from Indonesia, well, they were certainly a surprise finalist. En route to the final, they beat two of their compatriots, and whilst I wasn't too surprised that they beat the ageing legends Mohamed Hassan and Hendra Setiawan, their semi-final win over Karnando Maulana certainly was. But watching that semi-final, they earned that final spot as they dominated the areas in which Karnando Maulana had shown dominance in previous tournaments, namely the first 3 to 4 shots. With that in mind, it did make me think that they could really trouble Kang and Seo, because in the Korea Open final where they played Karnando Maulana, it was the first 3 to 4 shots which they really struggled with. So the fact that Gautama and Isfahani dominated Karnando Maulana in the first 3 to 4 shots, well, it did make me think that Kang and Seo possibly could struggle. However, it became quickly apparent that this wouldn't be the case. Kang and Seo came in much better prepared, dominating the match from start to finish. Their defence was incredibly solid and their forehand to forehand attack combo was lethal. I was particularly impressed by Kang Min-hyuk, as he showed all the attributes that had impressed me when I first noticed him at the Korea Open in 2022, with the main one being his front court creativity. This couldn't be better summed up than how they won the match.
Nothing lucky about that final point. Well constructed and well finished off by Kang Min-hyuk and So Seung-jae.
One last thing I'll say about Kang and Seo is that although it's so soon since the Olympic Games, it is quite impressive how quickly they've turned around the disappointment they must have felt following those Olympics. Especially So Seung-jae, as he left Paris empty-handed, even though he went into it as the world champion in both the doubles and the mixed doubles. And I think it's quite obvious to point out that a big factor in So Seung-jae reaching 3 consecutive finals and winning 1 title is that he's only focusing on one event. A smart move, and I hope it's something that he does moving forward. The third final of the day was the women's singles, which saw Han Yue come through against Putri Kusuma Wardani of Indonesia. A close opening game that could have gone either way was followed up by an incredibly one-sided affair, as Wardani struggled to not only judge the back lines on her side, but couldn't control her rear court shots to the other. Han Yue was a step above in this final. She was the better player, but a big determining factor in this that must be mentioned is mental fatigue on the part of Wardani. She made the final the week before in Taipei, and that run to the final included a huge win over former world number 1 Tai Tzu Ying. So to have that kind of week and then travel and battle all the way through to the final in an even bigger tournament, with some matches within that were quite tiring and mentally fatiguing, especially that semi-final against Tomoka Miyazaki, then it's no surprise that after losing that close opener, she didn't have much left. This win for Han Yue will be a huge confidence boost, as with the retirement of Hebing Jiao, then there's a real fight to become the second Chinese women's singles player. Maybe even a fight for the top spot, as Chen Yufei is currently out, and I think there's some question marks as to whether she'll continue until the next Olympic Games. I'll be honest, I've never really seen Han Yue as the successor in Chinese women's singles. For me, that title would go to Wang Ziyi. But this week in Hong Kong has slightly changed my mind on that. She has an almost old school style, reminiscent of Chinese players from years past, with her much more pronounced turn on her overhead hitting action. I'll definitely be keeping a much closer eye on her moving forward, as too will I some other players that came about at this Hong Kong Open, but I'll get to that a little later on. For now, let's move on to the next final, the mixed doubles. In that final, Zhang Zhengbang and Wei Yajin defeated compatriots Feng Yanze and Wang Dongping in rather convincing fashion. The score was 21-17, 21-19, but in all honesty I don't think that score reflects what the match actually was. If I'm honest, Zhang and Wei could have easily won this to 14-14. Other than trailing at the beginning of the second game, Zhang and Wei were in complete control. Steven Pedersen's LA 2028 prediction, with Zhang and Wei being the top contenders, is looking stronger and stronger with every tournament. I honestly see Zhang and Wei as the next world number 1 pair, a case made stronger not just by how they have been playing this year so far, with numerous titles under their belt, but that Zheng Siwei and Wang Yachong's future is uncertain, and also we've seen the end of quite a few of the other top pairs. So Seung-jae and Cha Yu-jung, as well as Watanabe and Higashino, just to name 2 massive ones. The door is wide open for Zhang and Wei, but even if it wasn't, the way they've been playing, I feel they would kick that door down. Wei is phenomenal in the front half of the court, and Zhang for me has one of the best techniques in mixed doubles, with an ability to whip the shuttle all over the place. And don't even get me started on his jumping abilities. He's like a kangaroo, leaping everywhere with what seems like minimal effort. Before moving on, I do want to touch in on the runners-up, Feng Yanze and Wang Dongping. More specifically, that I don't think they could be the pair to take the mantle from Zheng Siwei and Wang Yachong. Feng Yanze has always had a question mark against his name for me when it comes to handling pressure, and it was on show again in this Hong Kong Open final. I also, for the first time, saw genuine frustration from Wang Dongping when Feng missed some crucial shots, none more so than after his miss on the match point. Steven Pedersen and Jill Clark also raised quite an interesting question during that mixed doubles final, the question being, where does Wang Dongping go from here? Will we see her continue to LA in 2028, And if so, will it be with Feng Yanze or someone new? I guess we'll just have to wait and see, but it does leave me wondering. What doesn't leave me wondering is my thoughts on just how good Viktor Axelsen is. Aside from one or two minor blips, he puts in a pretty flawless week, capping it off with a final that quite honestly was never in doubt. I felt that way before his final began, simply because I didn't feel that Lei Lanxi had any of the weaponry to truly hurt or fluster Viktor. To hurt Viktor, you either have to be insanely fast, insanely skillful, or have an absolutely monstrous attack. Now, it's not like Lei Lanxi isn't quick, isn't skillful, and can't win his own points with his attacking shots. Just that he doesn't have any of those at the level that I feel you need to completely fluster and rattle Viktor Axelsen. And this was proven right, as Viktor looked crazy comfortable in that final. I must say though, one thing that did surprise me, and surprised me over the last few years, but that's just how determined Viktor is to keep winning. In the past, after players have won certain major titles like the Worlds or definitely the Olympics, we've seen them mellow somewhat, but not Viktor. It's not like I didn't expect him to not want to win every time he plays, but I didn't expect that level of fist pumping and celebrations from a Super 500. Even his celebration when he won was more than I expected. But it just shows the level of competitiveness the guy has, and how much fire and desire he has to keep going. We'll have to see, but as I see it, unless age catches him up rather quickly, I think that Viktor has his sights firmly set on LA already. So those are the champions from the Hong Kong Super 500. Sadly, we had no amazing finals, but that's not to say that we didn't have any amazing matches throughout the week, and some rather special performances from a number of players. And it's those special performances that I want to get into next. I've mentioned a few of these standout players and pairs already, but I was impressed by a number of the finalists from this week. Gautama and Isfahani had a great week, really great from an independent pair with no coach. Well, Asan did help them in the quarters, but other than that they were on their own. Wadani had a really hard week and backed up her final in Taipei with another final here. Wadani actually caught my eye 3 years ago in 2021 when she won the Spain Masters as an 18-year-old. I thought, here we have a young Indonesian women's singles player who's tall, athletic, fast and powerful, something that I hadn't seen much of from Indonesian players in quite a while. But then when she took the step up to bigger tournaments, she really struggled to get results. And then earlier this year she was left out of the Uber Cup team. A Uber Cup team that went on to get to the final. So it's great to see her coming back. She still has all the attributes that made me take notice of her in 2021, but just a bit better. And what's really good is that she has plenty of room for improvement. If you're an Indonesian fan, then you can get a little bit excited, because if you combine players like Wadani with others like Wadeo, and of course Olympic bronze medalist Tunjung, then the future for women's singles in Indonesia is looking pretty bright. Maybe we are even seeing the early beginnings of a resurgence in the women's singles for Indonesian players. That would be something to see. I'd certainly love to see that. And seeing as I'm on the subject of women's singles, I simply can't overlook the 18-year-old Tomoka Miyazaki from Japan. She reached the semi-finals in Hong Kong and in all honesty had a great chance to make the final. Tomoka came on my radar when she won the World Junior Championships 2 years ago at only 16. She was fast, agile, skillful, and above all else incredibly powerful for someone with such a slight build. And since entering the Japanese A team about a year ago, they've definitely built up her physical strength. When I watched her play her opening round in Hong Kong, I knew immediately that I was watching an adult now, not a child. Of course, this isn't all that she has developed whilst being in the Japanese A team. There's plenty more to that, but it was just what stood out to me quite majorly was just how much more physically complete she seemed. She still has a very long way to go. Her lack of experience really came to the forefront in that semi-final, But with everything I saw of her this week compared to where she was just a year ago, maybe even just 6 months ago, then there's no doubt in my mind that she's going to put herself in these situations more and more. And once she does, building up the experience, then she's going to be a real handful and a player that we're going to see win many more titles. I have to say, women's singles is in a really healthy position right now. It isn't just players like Tomoka and Wadani that are good for the next generation, there are plenty of others, and others that did actually play in Hong Kong. And I'm really happy about this because the women's singles discipline has been one of my favourites for a long time. So it's great to see that I don't think it's going to get any weaker over the next Olympic period and beyond that. Moving on from a younger player to a player now with far more experience. There's been a lot of talk recently about new partnerships. In my latest video, I talked about China changing up their women's doubles and Indonesia changing up their men's doubles. What I didn't talk about in that video, but will address now, is the new partnership for the double Olympic champion Wang Qilin. Wang is now partnering Chu Xiangche, and they reached the semi-finals in Hong Kong. A solid result that builds on top of their others so far in their short time together, as they've also reached the semi-finals in Korea and the quarter-finals in Taipei. Chu Xiangche is a real change from Li Yang. Not only is he much taller, but he is also left-handed. It is a completely new dynamic for Wang Qilin, but it's certainly an interesting one. In both of Wang's previous partnerships, he's been the out-and-out rear court player, the attacking force from the back. But with this new partnership, that isn't the case. Chu is equally as powerful and competent from the backcourt, and being left-handed, it does open up some new combinations, with one big one being what Kang and Seo used so effectively in the final, the forehand to forehand combo. It is too early to tell whether this pair can develop further, as well as be contenders in the majors. But with Wang Qilin's ability and experience, coupled with the potential that Chu has, then it's certainly possible. There are some clear areas that they need to work on though, with the main ones being the front court, and I'd also say defence. Also, I feel that they're going to need to develop more attacks and combos, as currently I feel there are counters to their style that aren't too complicated. An example of this is that they've played Kang and Seo twice now, and both times they've won the opening game, just lost the second, but then gone on to lose the third quite easily. This isn't a fatigue issue though, but more that the Koreans got used to what Wang and Chu were doing, and then were able to counter them. Wang and Chu weren't able to counter this back as they've only really got one style of playing, which is understandable as they haven't been playing long together and they probably also haven't practiced together much. So what's going to be really interesting for me is not just how they develop as individuals, but how do they develop as a pair? Can they develop more attacks, more combinations, and also develop more styles? So that if they run into a situation like they have against Kang and Seo, where their initial favourable style gets countered, they've got something else to do. Something else, a different style that they can switch to keep them effective, so that they can start to challenge and beat the better pairs. Because if they only stay as one style, then I don't think they're going to progress much further. A harsh critique, I know, and of course I have no doubt that they're able to do it. I mean, Wang Qilin is a double Olympic champion for a reason, and Chu clearly has a lot of ability and skills. So I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on how this pair develops, and can they do exactly what I've just said. For me, that is everything that caught my eye during the Hong Kong Open. Well, not everything, there were a few other things, but these were the main ones that I felt were worth talking about. If you think there's something else that I should have discussed in this video, then obviously let me know in the comments. Looking ahead, next week we have the last Super 1000 of the year, the China Open. And looking at the draws, it's sure to be quite an exciting week, as we are expected to see the return of a number of the top stars for the first time since the Olympic Games. Players like Eun Si-young, Liang and Wang, as well as Zheng Si-wei and Wang Ya-chong. I must say though, I do feel that we're going to see a number of draws. In fact, by the time this video comes out, those withdrawals might already be known. And I say that because in the mixed doubles, for example, there are 2 pairs that have already announced their split, with one of them already having their final tournament together in Japan. I'm of course talking about Yuta Watanabe and Arisa Higashino. The other pair is Sursun Jae and Cha Yu-jung. So basing on that, we might see some more pairs withdraw, and also maybe some players from the singles as well. I think this happens because within the top tier tournaments, the Super 1000s, for your top 10, I believe, that you kind of have to play them. So to avoid a fine or some sort of sanction, the pairs and players are entered only to be withdrawn just before the tournament starts. That way it's kind of like a loophole to get around it. So I do think we're going to see some withdrawals before the China Open, but hopefully not too many, because I really hope that we can have a fantastic event, and being a Super 1000, you do want the top stars there. Of course, I'll be watching as much of the China Super 1000 as possible, and I'll be bringing you another video just like this same time next week. I hope you've enjoyed this video, the first of Beckman's breakdowns. Again, still let me know if you think that name's any good. Being the first of a new series type, there's of course going to be teething problems. Hopefully as I do more of these, I get a better idea of the structure, what to talk about, etc. But I think for now I've covered most of the things I thought were quite interesting. Obviously going to mainly focus on the champions, the finalists, and a few other standout performances. Anyway, thank you for watching this video, I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, then please do like it, share it, comment on it, and if you like to subscribe, then I'd also really appreciate that. It definitely helps the channel and helps me create even more content. Talking of content, I am in the process of making my next big video, I guess, something different to just talking about tournaments, hopefully out probably by the end of the China Open, maybe soon after. I'll keep you all posted in my community tab. Thanks guys, see you next time.